heavy because we're Westerners. No, I heard talk about I brought too many clothes. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So with this rivers of living waters, if we go to Ezekiel chapter 37, for some reason this is a controversial chapter. I don't know why. When Yahweh, a lot of things in the scriptures people take as black and white, but when it comes to this chapter, there's a major problem. Ezekiel chapter 37. When Yeshua comes, you as Yahweh walkers, you're the, what harvest festival are you of? What harvest festival are the Yahweh walkers of? Huh? Wheat. And what holiday is that?
Pesach?
No. Shavuot. Because it's a, what type of harvest?
Wheat harvest.
It's a wheat harvest. What's in the spring with unleavened bread? Barley harvest.
Okay.
Barley takes a lot of abuse, and that abuse was put on Messiah, and also we share that abuse. So that Yom Rishit, Yeshua's Yom Rishit, that's what it says there in the Hebrew. He's the first of the first fruits. And he connects us with the Omer count because he's talking about a measure of grain. It says, you guys are also part of me as a barley harvest, and we metamorphize into wheat. So he's the first of the first, as you read in 1 Corinthians 15. He links himself with us. The barley, just like a worm turns into a butterfly, the barley turns into wheat. And wheat is a kingly fruit. Barley is usually given to the animals as fodder. But in Hebrew, they want wheat. And the ancient wheat was extra delicious, very good for you. You know, you can live on and so forth. But so if we are the wheat harvest, and we went over 1 Corinthians chapter 15, Paul does not address the tabernacle harvest. He addresses the Yom Rishit harvest of Yeshua, and he addresses the Shavuot or the Pentecost harvest of us. He doesn't touch the tabernacles because he's talking to the Corinthians down there in the Greek area. And remember, the Sadducees inside the congregation are saying there's no resurrection. And why are you baptizing for the dead? He's not doing what they're not doing what the Mormons do. They'll take somebody that's dead and they'll take a live Mormon, and you're going to die, for instance, Francisca's and the Nominati, and they baptize so that person will have some, you know, delivery and back into heaven or whatever. I don't know. Or some say it's the Jews, you know, when they take the dead body and they do this, the ritual washings and everything. Paul's not addressing that. Paul's addressing a real thing that the Sadducees within the synagogue that the Yahweh walkers are in, because they say there's no resurrection. So then they say when Yeshua died, he didn't come up out of the ground. So that when you get baptized, Lori gets baptized, and she's being baptized for dead, the dead person is Messiah that didn't come out of the grave. And Paul says, why are we baptizing for a dead if there's no resurrection? Then he says our hope is lost. But he says, then he recounts to them, he was seen of us. He was seen of 400, and he was seen of some other people. We have physical, real witnesses that are probably still alive the day that he's giving his message to the Corinthians, and says, we have hope. He says, if we don't have this hope, then do whatever you want. Go out there and join all these people outside the camp, and don't do no Sukkot. So when you go to, and all he talks about is Yom Rishit resurrection and the wheat harvest resurrection. Then he goes all the way to the end. The end in the sense of where he says he defeats death. And he doesn't cover tabernacles at all. So people, they have this thing, the Yahweh walkers like, there's only two resurrections, one for damnation and one for hope. But since we're not taking the whole pattern of all Yahweh's holidays, well, what about tabernacles? This is the feast of fat things, wine on the leaves, the belly of water just coming out. And the bellies of water shows you a huge resurrection. You're talking about triplets, we're talking about on steroids. Because when this water comes out, it's bringing forth life. And when a baby's inside of a womb, that's a picture of what? Yeah, but what's one of the big pictures about it? If the baby's in the womb, what's the big picture? Huh?
Protection?
All those are involved, but what it is a big picture of?
A belly, big belly.
Well,
Oh,
we got the big belly. We got the big belly, but what is the pregnancy
birth
of a
pains?
child inside of a womb? What is that a big picture of?
Protection. Life. I don't know.
Death.
All those things, yes. Remember, Yahweh has a conscience in them. Yes, those things are right. But what is this big picture?
Life.
Because if that belly of water does not break, what happens?
Death.
Death! It's a picture of death. If that child does not come out of that belly, he's not a fish. He can't breathe water. I've seen that working in labor and delivery. I've seen that. That's not a pretty picture. That baby doesn't come out of that living waters, that baby's dead. He's not a fish. He's not an octopus. It's not a lot. Huh? It's a picture of the grave. It's a picture of the grave. He's got to come out of the matrix. That child's got to come out of the matrix. And I tell you, the biggest womb on this planet is where? Earth. Who's in the earth? Who's in the earth?
We are.
But who's we? No, we're alive. We're not in the earth. Who's in the earth?
Belly of the earth?
Who's in the earth? I don't care if you can call it belly, but who's in the earth? In. The dead.
Okay. Okay.
Most people on this planet that's been in this life on this planet is in this earth. When you go to Ezekiel chapter 37, Ezekiel chapter 37, we're going to talk about part of this earth that has a potential for out of the belly come living waters. The hand of Yahweh was upon me, is upon Ezekiel. Ezekiel is in Babylon. He's in Iraq. He's a captive. Because Yahweh told through Jeremiah, it says, Israel, in this case Judah, go to Babylon. Most people today, you tell them to go to Babylon, say, I ain't going to go to Babylon. They'll say, oh, he's a false prophet. I listen to the prophet that says, you know, get my bug out there and go opposite of the Babylon. And you had people that did that. You had people that did not listen to Jeremiah, and Yahweh beat them up. When Babylon came in there, killed a huge number of them. But the ones that went with Babylon, they were able to marry, able to have farms, able to live in the big castle. Some of them, and so forth.
He even told them to choose life by doing it.
But choose life.
Doing what he said.
So we have to be very careful, very circumspect. So here's good old Ezekiel. He says, the Spirit of Yahweh took me and set me down in a valley. And remember, valley, we talked about that last year. Valley is a picture of our ego. It's a picture of death, because the valley was used by warriors to fight. And what happens when you fight? You got dead people around. You got plenty of room to swing your swords and everything else and so forth, and your spears and your arrows. The battle's happening in the valley. See, we don't know that because we have our modern warfare. We can fight anywhere, you know. We just push a button, put a drone up somewhere. So we don't have that concept. And he made me to pass among them all these bones in the valley, this huge valley, all around. And see, there were many on the surface of the valley. That's even worse, because Yahweh wants you to bury people. These people are in a state of defilement. They are on top of the valley. There are all these bones, and Ezekiel's going through these bones in this we would call it a holograph imagery. And Ezekiel's going through it and see all these bones. And he says, he made me pass through all these bones. And there were very many on the surface of the valley. And see, they were very dry. Not that they were just bones, but they were dry. There is no life. Nothing. Zero. You can't even add water and reconstitute them. They're gone. They're toast. And he says, he said to me, Son of Man. And remember, Son of Man is the title of divinity. When I use that on my side, they're saying he is Elohim, that he is the mighty one. He is Yahweh. And people that say, he never said he was God, every time you use the word Son of Man, he's saying, I am God. I am Elohim. He's saying that. And people say, oh, he just said he's the Son of Man. Hello. And he said to me, son of man, Yahweh, would these bones live? Would these bones live? And I said, oh, Master Yahweh, you know it. You know the answer. And again, he said to me, prophesy to these bones. Proclaim to these bones, and you shall say to them, O dry bones, hear the word of Yahweh. You know, hear the word of Yahweh. Thus says the Master Yahweh to these bones. See, I'm bringing into you a spirit, a ruach, a breath, and you shall live. In this case, a breath. And he says, Yahweh says, I will put muscles on you, and I will put flesh upon you, and I will cover you with skin, and I will put breath in you, and you shall live. A picture of the waters from his belly. And you shall know that I'm Yahweh. I guarantee you, folks, this is all, well, we see who it is. But when a person wakes up out of the grave, whether from a second later or 1,000 years down the road, and they wake up, and they're going to say, oh, my dear, Elohim does exist. They might say God exists. Because what? I got hit by a car. I got chopped up by a guillotine. Somebody hit me with a sword. I got eaten by a shark, whatever case may be. And somebody brought me back to life. I was screaming and hollering. All of a sudden, I was unconscious. And I wake up, and there's a splendiferous area that I'm at. And then Yahweh said, we just read it, it says, and you would know that I'm Yahweh. Not Buddha, not Isis, not Osiris, you know, not Zoroaster, not Confucius, whoever that was.
Nimrod.
Not Nimrod, not Pharaoh. And he says, I prophesy, not Allah.
Thank you. Amen.
And I prophesied as I was directed, and I prophesied, and there was a noise, and there was a rattling, and it wasn't a baby going, it was a noise that we probably can't even comprehend. And the bones came together, bone to bone. Remember, he's in his holograph image. You know, you can make a movie of this. They make all kinds of movies of things come back alive. Can they make this movie? Make this Ezekiel movie right here. And I looked and I saw muscles and flesh come upon them. You know, just imagine Hollywood. Come on, you know, like they do. And skin covered them, and there was no breath in them. And he said to me, he said, proclaim to the spirit, to the ruach, prophesy, son of man, and you shall say to the spirit, thus says the Master Yahweh, come from the four winds in the spirit and breathe on these slain so that they live. Out of the belly, my belly, Yeshua says, comes rivers of living waters. This is the hugest baby delivery that you've ever seen. And he says, and I prophesied and proclaimed as he directed me, and the spirit came into them, breath came into them, and they lived. And they stood upon their feet. So they're laying down, you know, all these bodies that are reconstituted. Breath gets in, and all of a sudden they all stand up. Imagine that movie. And then it says, I commanded, and the spirit came in, and they lived, and they stood upon their feet. A very great army. I mean, a sea of people. And he said to me, son of man, these bones are all the house of Israel. All the house of Israel. Nobody's left behind. Yahweh's a better Marine than any Marine out there. He doesn't leave anybody behind. So we got Jacob, who made the children of Israel. You got all that. All the way to the time that Yeshua comes back. All Israel that their DNA is mixed up with all kinds of different types of peoples. Yahweh knows who he is. He has the ultimate, what's that DNA test they have on TV? What's that thing?
Ancestral.
Who?
Ancestral.
Ancestral.com. Yahweh's the ultimate ancestral.com.
Ancestry.
He's like, yep, you're an Israelite, you're an Israelite, you're an Israelite, so forth. And he has them. It doesn't matter if they're walking in some crazy religion or none at all. They're Israel. Yahweh says, boop, he's there out of the ground, and they're there. And Yahweh says, this great army, And this is what they say. This is very poignant because a lot of people have a problem because the people coming out of this ground, as Russ was saying, well, these weren't worthy. Because remember, everybody that's in the first resurrection, Shavuot, already live in spirit beings. This is in the beginning of this holiday we're doing, Tabernacles. And we'll see. And it says,